Hello, everyone, and welcome to our inaugural episode of Three Men in a Comic. Jake and I are excited to welcome back from Rave Sensation, Dan the Man. Dan, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you very much. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. We're excited to have you back. This is the second time we've had you on the channel, and we're super excited. I made a statement at the beginning of the year where we had such a great time talking with you about the Turbo teaser last year, and we're also big fans of your channel, and we just love the way you approach finding obscure comics, curating them, and talking about them. I figured, hey, wouldn't it be neat if one of us could find a comic that all three of us would want to read and review that has monsters in it for Dan and buxom women in it for Jake and Kurt. And you said, yeah, let me think about it. And like 2 weeks later, you send me this. And I was just completely knocked off my socks. So I'm going to put this in your court immediately and say, how did you find it? And, how does it meet that criteria for you?
Well, I was at a Barnes and Noble, and this was in their bargain section. Supposedly, this is some kind of special edition that they did for Barnes and Noble. Although what's different about it, I don't know. And it doesn't say Barnes and Noble
Yeah.
on it outside anywhere. And I got this, and I got it's a Superman comic. I think the artist name is Frank Quietly or something like that. And it's about Clark Kent goes to a prison to interview Lex Luthor, and shenanigans ensue. And between the two of them, they were like $5 a piece, and so I picked up both those.
Barnes and Noble sometimes really blows things out. I've gotten some coffee table books, Marvel coffee table books there for $5. You just got to be right place, right time.
Yeah, yeah, it always pays to look at the blowout stuff. I mean, yeah, a lot of times you won't find anything you want, but it kind of pays off. Everybody tells me go to Ollie's and you'll find all these great
Yep.
things. I never find anything there, but
It's a needle in a haystack.
yeah,
Ollie's has great prices, but it's 99% nothing you want. So
well,
you just got to comb through it all.
yeah. Sorry, I stepped on you there, but yeah, the thing is, I also realize that my tastes are. I wouldn't say they're very specific, but I like what I like, and I'm generally not interested in superhero stuff. But I wasn't familiar with this artist, Daniel Warren Johnson, although now I understand he's kind of uh, a fan favorite in some quarters. But
Yep.
I wasn't familiar with him. But he reminded me a bit of Paul Pope or
Yes,
someone like
yes.
that.
Becky
And
Clooney.
I really like the art. Yeah, so that's why, and I like end of the world stuff and monsters. So it's like, yeah, I'll take it.
It's a great choice.
Um, Yeah, we actually covered Daniel Warren Johnston briefly on Comics and Influence when I picked up a couple of issues of his 7-issue miniseries. I think I picked up 3 issues of it, called "Do a Power Bomb,"
Yeah, yeah.
and it was about a
uh,
female wrestler.
Actually,
And
that's where I've heard of him now. Is you guys talking about Powerbomb?
right. Oh, so you heard of it, yeah, through us, right?
Yeah,
So
but
we cross
I already
pollinate
owned
yet
this
again.
comic. I had already bought this comic by that time.
Okay.
Because I actually bought this a couple years ago. So don't rush out to Barnes and Nobles looking for this, because this was a couple years ago,
Yeah.
and I just happened to think of it again. It's probably because you guys mentioned it on the channel that I dug it out.
It
I'm not
might have
sure now.
been. I mean, it was my first experience with him, and I also kind of knew that he was popular nowadays, but I was just playing catch up. And anything with female wrestlers, I'm in. So I picked up 3 copies. I could probably get the rest, for $4 a piece, somewhere if I look hard enough. But I was really impressed with his art style, being kind of a quick but good style. So he really, brought me back to like, to the Kirby's. And, I actually came across some Milton Caniff. And I think maybe these guys, Paul Pope and this guy Johnson, they might be inspired if they go back to Milton Caniff, because he had this style that was, really good when you need it to be, and then really quick when you need it to be, and very interesting combination, and definitely brushwork, like a lot of good brushwork. So, the aesthetics really got me. But in this case, it looks like they're doing. Is this like a reimagining of Wonder Woman in a dystopian, uh, post-apocalyptic setting? Is this what we're doing here?
Yeah, they're kind of. Oh, let me get to the same page you're at there. Yeah, it's kind of like it's a slightly different take on Wonder Woman. And by the time I got to the
Yeah.
end of it, I kind of wished, well, I wish I had seen a more traditional Wonder Woman in this
I
role,
agree. I
because I
agree.
would have, I would have, I would have felt more of uh, the triumphant return. This is like she's a kid.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not really sure how old she's supposed to be, because, she's an Amazon. Maybe she's a teenager for 300 years. I don't know. Um,
how
but at first when I saw it,
that all works.
yeah, at first I was kind of like, I was okay with, as I'm reading it, I'm going like, oh, that's cool. She's a teen Wonder Woman. The world's already ended. But then well, I don't want to jump too far ahead of
It
where we're going.
it's
Well,
still
let's take it. Let's take it page by
yeah, here,
page.
hold on.
This is a
The
flip
one
through.
thing that I want to add to that is the thing I enjoyed was that she didn't look like Gal Gadot. So she wasn't this pretty character. So the teenager thing did make me go, "Oh, okay, so this is written for a YA audience. This has nothing to do with my generation or anybody that grew up with Wonder Woman." But with that being said, all set aside, I mean, a tremendous undertaking that Daniel Warren Johnson has taken on to story arc this. And yeah, let's just really just jump right in because it goes pretty
Yeah. So
bonkers pretty quickly.
there's a lot of great action in here, monsters. So yeah, something's happening to the world. Do we get the for those of us that have actually read the setup, do we get the explanation of what happened to the world, or are we just thrust into this
No, we
hellscape?
get it in flashbacks. There's like three or
Okay.
maybe more major flashbacks in the story that fill it all in.
Yeah, it's
Right.
it's really it's
Um.
really from the idea that and this is where I kind of project that even as a teenager, um, I wish Diana looked a little more Greek than she does. Just in aesthetic wise, she looks too generic, non-white girl. But with that being said, the fact that she's a god and she lives in her own godly place has kind of she perceives has saved her from being uh, um, destroyed by what we humans have done to the earth and then ultimately using tactical nuclear weapons.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
it.
This is. Mhm.
Go ahead,
Go.
Jake.
Yeah, I also noticed that there's kind of like maybe like a side reference here to the guy crashing in the plane, because that was the Wonder Woman movie where she meets her romantic interest. But here she's much younger, and he's like it looks like he's an adult male. She's just like a teen or something. So it's kind of like a twist on that, but also kind of like a sideways tie-in. Um, I love, anything post-apocalyptic. It reminds me of, or dystopian. It reminds me of, Dark Knight. Like, let's do a Dark Knight on Wonder Woman, right? Is that what the pitch might have been?
Um, I mean, the way Wonder Woman reacts to, um, you know, Superman, and Superman's turning out to be just as human as anybody else and his failings. Um, that's very Dark Knight uh, but the repercussions of what she does are much heavier. Um, I'm not sure what led this on. I think if Dark Knight had never happened, this wouldn't have happened. But
It's a
I,
good
I don't
point.
know how direct an
Right.
influence. Yeah.
And I notice it's also Black Label. Is the DC Black Label all kind of like reimaginings? Am I getting them right? Because I've only seen one or two pieces.
I think it was. I think it's supposed to be more adult content that's is not part of continuity.
Yeah, and that's where I
Right.
think they
Okay.
fail. I think they fail with that because I still think they're leaning way because there's and it's very much Daniel Warren's style, and it's very cartoony. It goes more cartoony than comic book, if that makes any sense. Which is not a negative for me, but
Yes
I
and no.
think also the
Yeah.
storyline where it could have gone maybe one or two steps forward on something, um, it just kind of falls back on it. So, but I don't know anything about DC and a black label and a child or an adult or anything to that extent. I do respect that this is 2007. When was this?
Is that when that came out?
Oh no,
I thought
well this
Black
is
Label was
2020.
nowadays.
This is 2020. This is 2020. So I apologize
Yeah,
for that.
Black Label
Yeah.
is current. Yeah, the Black Label is current. And Kurt, just to respond to, you know, it's a combination of cartoony when he wants to. Sometimes he really does kind of shortcut the faces. But look at the nuclear holocaust.
Oh,
Look at the
I'm
buildings.
in
Look at,
love with his work.
I mean,
I'm in love with his work.
yeah, some of the details.
I'm putting a critique more on. I'll just call myself out. Like the the mainstream comic books have never enticed me as much as a alternative or indie comic artist has, whether it's black and white or not. It's always had an edge to it, and that edge is found in the story and the art. I think that alternative adult, if you will, edge is not in here. I think it plays safe along all of the lines. And I think the work itself reflects it. Like I'm saying right now, I love his work. I'm going to start hunting down more and more of it. And I want to start getting more Paul Pope stuff. But I think there's just something that, we old guys, myself speaking right now, you got to kind of just take it or leave it. I'm very much taking it. And as an artist, I'm going to be taking a lot of this stuff. Dan.
Yeah.
Well, I think the part why they put it on here is because I don't think the writing level is above. Uh, I think if when I was a kid, I constantly wanted to read things that I shouldn't have. As far
Yeah,
as
me
supposed
too.
maturity level. But the thing is, and I guess I'll skip ahead because people aren't really watching this to, they know there's going to be spoilers. I mean, she kills Superman. She gets mad and kills Superman.
Yep.
I don't think they wanted that to be under their regular label. I think that is a step beyond
Very good point.
what you want to have one of your big heroes kill another one. Um, that being said, I think it straddles the line fairly well. The violence is really done well. He does great action. The coloring is very modern, but I hate most modern coloring. But this is a okay. You guys have flipped the page.
It's
But
not bad coloring.
this is a case where I think it works.
I
I
agree.
don't dislike this coloring. And I think that's because they show a lot of restraint. You could see they had that enormous palette that everyone thinks they have to take advantage of in every single issue of every book nowadays. And I'm exaggerating. If I've
No, you're
told you
not.
once, I've told you 1,000 times. Don't exaggerate. No, there are books that buck the trend, but it's pretty ubiquitous. I think when you look at the new comics racks on Wednesdays, so they're using those colors, but they're not overusing them. I think that looks good. That's another thing that attracted me to pick this up when I had no idea who he was. And like, I don't know Wonder Woman from, I'm familiar with the Golden Age stuff because
Yep.
I had a cool collection that I got at one time, and it was so bizarre. A grown down big girl or something. Just all these bizarre things that they had in those early issues. And then I'm familiar with them from the cartoons that I watched with my kids when they were little. Um, but so I'm not I'm not married to a particular type of Wonder Woman. But at the end of the day, all I was really saying is I think the themes of this book would have been better handled if he hadn't gone and made this. And I think I don't know if it was Kurt or Jake who said they were aiming this at a young audience with this character being this young. I agree with that. I think that's okay if it actually makes it more appealing to young readers. But I think it was kind of a mistake in the idea of the redemption. And, but anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that
Yeah, I
particular
mean,
part. Oh,
well, they're letting here we're seeing an artist do the writing too, and so I'm recognizing some of the same stuff that we're seeing in his Powerbomb series. So he's going to his strengths. He's making the story wrap around the things that he likes to draw and the poses and the setup situations. I think he's doing a great job here. What you're saying about the colors is good, that they're showing some restraint, which you need to do. I'm a middle school teacher, so I'm used to every kid uses every color in the palette every time. But that you have to think about, the feel of, page by page. Um, I also saw a very interesting critique of modern comics. I think it was on Facebook where a female creator was saying that between the art and the coloring that we're overdoing pages nowadays, and that the art should leave a little space for the colorist to do interesting things, and that when the artist does 100% and then the colorist does 100%, you end up with 200% on the page, and we're um and so that was an interesting thing. I am keeping that in mind.
Well, if I could jump
um
in,
I do believe.
just to
Yeah,
add
go
to
ahead,
that
Kurt.
point, Jake, I also heard that there's a lack of editor and art direction going on at the big two. So, in other words, when these pages are, let's say, being primed in just the black and white, like pencil inking stage digitally, however that works, you know, or is the editor or art director kicking it back to them and saying, "Hey, you've not left enough room for the colorist." And then when it gets moved to the
Yeah.
colorist, is then the art direction editor saying, "Hey, look, let's keep the palette, and I've set you up with something to help guide you." And it's been in collaboration with the pencil inker or digital artist, and then move through. It just seems like everybody gets their cake and eat it too. But this is all, I think, other
Right.
than the lettering, Daniel Warren is doing is really, yeah, story and art. No, coloring is by Mike Spicer. So I wouldn't be surprised if
Yeah.
Mike Spicer is really good friends with Johnson, even if it's just an online relationship. And there's some really decent direction coming from Johnson going from there. But there's even no editor listed here. There's no editor.
Well, in this case, that maybe worked out for the better. I don't know, but I would point out here because the other thing I really like about this is, first off, I guess I'm kind of tired of the regular size comic. rather see it magazine size or just a bigger page.
Yeah.
Probably because my eyes are poor. I don't want to read too small a print. But the other thing is that there's very little good backgrounds in a lot of comics
So
that I
good.
flip through at the
So
rack,
good
new
point.
things,
Right.
and and here, beautiful background. All this is great, and the panels are big enough. The room is there to do it. You know, and that's another thing that I appreciated is him setting the scene. And a lot of people, I swear that what some people are doing is if they're going to need a street scene, they just take a photo and they're doing something in Photoshop to get that background for it because they seem very generic. I'm not sure that that's true. I know that the Japanese manga stuff, they do stuff like that because they're under such crazy pressure to produce, 17 pages a week.
Yeah, but they have a
But
studio. They've got so
right.
many other
I get
people
that.
with
I
them.
get that. But still, like I say, I really appreciate. I mean, that's a great thing. I mean, for a second, I was about to say maybe the figures should pop a little bit more, but I think it fits the tone of the scene. I just think he does a great job with showing this apocalyptic, these destroyed buildings and stuff. So just thought I'd put that out.
Yeah, I mean that's a very impactful scene. Some of this reminds me of the Alien movie and the H.R.
Uh,
Giger, where they're coming in on these scenes. You got the Batman who's dead in skeletal form on the couch. That's a big impact moment right there. Um, Great point about this guy not skimping on backgrounds. Even if you do it a little bit like sketchy or a little bit impressionistic, I really appreciate that he's putting a lot on the page. Way too many comics are sparse, and they don't even bother. Maybe they just tell the colors to put in like a blend or something, and it's just like cop out. But Kurt, to your point, I think what's happening here is DC is really trusting the artist. This is an established artist with a big following, and he is given the property. So when it comes back into the office, um, you know, it may be the thing where there's just they just don't have the staff to do like revisions and edits and all that kind of stuff. And it also might be the thing where you have to manage your star athletes and say, well, we don't like this, and this, and this. We want you to take it back and redo it. Is that going to, you know, I mean, I imagine that they're allowing these guys a long leash to make the comic the
It's
way
a
they
good
see
point.
fit in the
It's a
first
good
place.
point. I think
And
the I
you
think
know,
that
and there might be some things where there might be some things where say, well,
right,
legal says you
right,
can't do this,
right,
or
right,
corporate
right.
says you can't do that. But he's playing around with Batman. He's playing around with
But
Superman. Give
this
him what he
also
wants
goes
on the
to
page.
my
So
whole prediction that the big two are going to do more and more or allow more and more stuff like this. It's like Ed and Jim and Tom Scully doing the grand designs for X-Men, Hulk, and Fantastic Four. So those were
Fantastic Four.
all. As a matter of fact, last week, Ed Piskor had brought up how he did, how he basically said to them, this is how you're getting it. And before he even got the work going and contractually signing anything, in other words, you got to stay out of my sandbox. I'm going to do what I'm going to do because I'm putting a little bit of words into Ed's mouth, but I'm Ed Piskor, that type of thing. And this is all before he did that before, the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel blew up. So he didn't have that clout. So I do believe that down the road, to get something this engaging, to have three old men talk about it on YouTube, you're going to have to take these kinds of chances. Dan, what do you think?
I mean, I think you're right. I think that probably it's they hired someone, and it might have even been in his contract to say, well, I have to have a lot of say in this. I don't know, there aren't probably things that were non-negotiable that they could be able to say, no, you can't do that.
Right.
But they trust them. And I think that's the only way. I mean, it's certainly the only way I'm buying Wonder Woman or I can't remember the
Yeah.
last time any kind of Spider-Man story maybe. I mean, and when I grew up, Spider-Man was it. Spider-Man started the year
Yeah.
after I was born, so those early issues were that's where that and Spider-Man and Fantastic Four and Thor, those were the ones, and but I haven't
It's
read
been a
Spider-Man
while.
in decades and decades. And when I stopped reading it back in the 70s, I would still buy the occasional issue. Like, I forget when Punisher came out. And I've been reading all the
Yeah.
men's magazines that they were kind of ripping off for that. And that's the only reason I picked that up. And,
Right.
and that had been my absolute favorite. But I've read as many Spider-Man comics, I think, as I need. So unless somebody comes up with some art
Yeah.
that does something special for me, and there probably are some really well drawn Spider-Man comics that have come out in the meantime, but I'm just not interested in learning about a devil taking away Peter's marriage to Mary Jane or clones or
Oh,
I mean
forget it.
all that.
How about the symbiotes and the whole Bagley era and all that? I'm so out. I'm with you. I mean, I might check it. I might check it out if they have like an AI Steve Ditko comic, maybe, or John Romita, Gil Kane. But I don't think there's anything they can do with the character to get me. I watched the animated movie just as an art teacher, and I'm really impressed with, the creativity of it. But I'm not into the story necessarily. I'm not into, you don't really, care about the characters. It isn't like it isn't grabbing you. It's just like, okay, this is
Now,
just
I
content,
get that
and
some kid whose first issue of Spider-Man is Miles Morales
Yeah.
or Morales,
Yeah.
sorry,
yeah,
that's going to be their Spider-Man, and that's fine for
Yeah.
them.
yeah,
I just don't know that I need to see, I don't need to see any more Spider-Man stories. And again, I don't mean this to sound like a super critical thing. I'm just saying I would like other things. I feel hypocritical because, somebody like Conan, I can read barbarian stories all the time, and they're very repetitive. But, to me, they're all about the art. There's somebody showing me, doing a fantastic drawing of a ruined temple or
Right. You're
a
right. You're
monster
right.
or this or that, and that's how I'd feel about, Steve Rude for a while when he was doing mainstream comics. I read some mainstream comics. He did like World's Finest and a few things, and I did enjoy those. So I'll admit to that. But anyway, I don't want this to sound all negative and
Well,
stuff. Let's keep rolling.
I think the kind of put this to a close on the sort of you put it very well, Dan, which is the idea that comics, every issue is going to be hopefully somebody's first issue. Children are one thing, but even somebody who's really getting tired of television, or just getting sick of it all, and you keep hearing about this thing called graphic novels, and you don't want to read a book, you want to see pictures too, and you take a chance and you go to Barnes and Nobles and there on the shelf is, oh, I know what a Wonder Woman is, and that looks, wow, like sword and sorcery, like, wow, I'll give that a shot. I know I would, having seen the Conan the Barbarian movie and being obsessed with it. And then and if this was my first comic book, I think you could develop me into being a DC fan. I think the problem comes into when you expect me to purchase, what is it, 300 to 500 issues worth of canon for each of these characters, and you know what I mean? I'll be like, I'm just going to go back to Netflix. That's the only problem. And my own pet peeve is with the big two is just leave all of the old stuff alone. Just deconnect and just start anew. And call him Spider-Man, but it's whoever and so on and so forth. But I think, getting us back into this Wonder Woman story, Dan, did you watch Game of Thrones?
I did. I did
Did
watch it.
you
I had started
did
reading
you
the
did you
books. Yeah, I had
kind
read the
of
books.
did you kind of see maybe a similarity, especially with the two towers and the guy that read the two towers? And yeah, I think there was something being pulled sort of out of that.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple nods to other fantasy type epics, and I don't mind that because they are not in your face. And
Right.
what I don't like is when they reference it and make it seem like it's going to be something, and then there's no payoff.
Correct.
I think the things in this book are they're background enough that you don't get your expectations going, and it's not a bait and switch
Right.
or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, no.
I'm getting more and more into this. I think Dan had a great point. Like here we are, three old timers, and we are sitting here gushing over
Yeah.
this Wonder Woman story.
Yep.
This did bring us back. Not that I was ever into Wonder Woman in the first place, but I love the movie. I love the first movie. Hated the second one. You got pit fights in here. You got amazing character, creative character designs here. I'm totally into this story, and it's kind of like old ancient Greek style, but it's also kind of like modern comic booky too. So I think this guy went to the museum, Danny Warren Johnson. I think he went to the museum, looked at some of those old Grecian urns, and he just, sketched it out. Beautiful idea, original idea here. Let's make these giant murals, reimagine what they might have looked like. Um, and there's a whole story going on the mural as Diana just sitting there with her mom on a bench talking, and it looks like people in the museum. This is great. Those little touches, the architecture, the you do bring in a little bit of Game of Thrones here. We're in this big court with all these like swordsmen and stuff. There's a lot going on. She's grabbing Batman's old utility belt and just throwing together this costume. Um, so I can't wait to see where it goes.
Yeah, and while we're on that page, that is a tremendous picture of her kicking that
Yeah.
giant table
Yeah.
into that group. I mean, that just has real impact for me.
Yeah.
And those are very cartoony looking, sound effects things, but I love it. I think it all looks good.
Well, what Jacob
Um,
brought up when we were going through the do a power bomb is like here the sound effect
Powerbomb.
is kick. I love that. I love that. I was reading. I sat down Friday night, and read the whole thing through. And when I started seeing these like kick and punch and slap, I would giggle. I would literally giggle because it is childish. And yes, comic books are childish in the social aperture of like art and being serious and comic books not being serious. But it's just such uh, a lean deeper into the medium and using word and picture. So this is the and also too when you reviewed Dan the first Turbo teaser, the last panel is Turbo walking away, and her arm and leg are very exaggerated. When I saw this, I kind of thought the same thing. Like, wow, like that's really exaggerated, but only to a point to help support that whole impact of the page and
Yeah.
that panel.
Yeah, well, I call that expressionist because it's foreshortening, which you do have in real life on a camera, but when the artist does it from imagination, it has unexpected results, as we saw with Turbo. So, so it ends up being art, a new kind of artistic interpretation, of what you're trying to say, what you're trying to show. And that's the things that computers won't be able to do, and I think, in Daniel, in this
Agreed.
case, it's great. We should celebrate it. He has a lot of panels where it looks like a combination of um, foreshortening, but also a combination of like motion blurring, and he just like, builds that in. Like when you see somebody's arm and, it looks like Mr. Fantastic's arm, because it's just whipping around, but that's really not how it looks. That's just like the feeling that you want to give the reader. So really, really innovative stuff. The guy doesn't care. He doesn't care what anybody thinks about his sound effects. I'm going to put kick. He doesn't. And where he's really quick on his brushwork, and when he's really sloppy and scribbly. Like I'm noticing the little like cuts and nicks all over Wonder Woman. Sometimes they're just like little X's, and he just like, I don't care. I'm not going to make this like a realistic cut. I'm just going to do like real quick and move on. And it's funny because in comic book language, when you put a little X on something, it means you want the inker to fill it in all the way, right? So, when you see that, it's funny, just to see that. I think,
Oh,
that's kind of
absolutely.
maybe like the Japanese influence to do those, kind of like internal shorthand and literal, instead of like onomatopoeia, to just do the literal words to describe what's going on in the
I
sound
want to
effects.
jump. I want
You
to
know.
jump just straight to the pit fighting because obviously, Turbo Pit Fighter is a big thing for Jake and I as we're working on it. So I think it's really great. But Dan, can you answer a question for me? Who
Sure.
who is this character who is referred to as both Barbara and Cheetah? When I read the whole entire story,
Now
I
that's
had
the now.
it's
Didn't Jake say?
nothing. I had nothing.
Didn't Jake say? Didn't Jake say that he saw the second movie? That's Cheetah.
Yes, and the cheetah
That's a
character
character from
was,
one. But she
yeah,
does not
the
look like.
cheetah.
Uh, I don't know DC that well, but she looks very humanoid usually. But she does have like claws and cat ears and stuff. But she doesn't look. She's not a giant monster or anything. But I don't really know her backstory or anything about her. I only know the DC stuff from the cartoon, or
Yeah,
the Justice League that Bruce Timm and I forget the other guy's name did. But the thing about the pit fighting things is I used to always hate when martial arts movies were like those kickboxer and stuff because I like the settings to change when they're fighting. I like to see people fighting in different locations. So whenever they would cheap out and have a whole movie in a fight, in a pit fight, I'd be like, oh well. but but like this kind of stuff, you were talking about Game of Thrones. Remember in Game of Thrones how many, every once in a while they suddenly go back to duels or people being thrown in a pit or something. And when it's used wisely, boy, it can have a big impact. And I think this kind of reminds me of the the Thor movie where Thor goes to another planet and the Hulk is there and they have to fight each other in the arena. So I don't know, but I think it's really well done. Um, and again, you have a very good look
yeah,
at this arena, and
they have a reimagining here. Yeah.
those little tiny things for the people that works for me. Um, so you don't have to worry about every single little detail. You just got to make sure that like those people there lead back into that, and then you get the idea about how many people were there. So I think it works pretty good. Although when I was first reading this, I didn't expect there to be that many people living in this inside this this gated, this fortress, this castle.
Right.
And Cheetah never had that.
I love this scene. Yeah, I just wiki this. Cheetah was dating back to 1943. William Moulton
Oh, wow.
Marston had her as Wonder Woman number 6, one of Wonder Woman's first enemies, with her distinctive, sleek, spotted appearance, and she has been reinterpreted many times in the Golden, Silver, and Bronze Age and current age, and here we see now. I think this is great that this comic is using that idea. But what did they do? So first of all, I love that she's really burly. You can see on the first panel of one of these pages, they have her like super muscular. Um, but she's also got this kind of like deformity. Like, first of all, there's a
Yeah.
live cheetah on her arm, but then her face looks like it's got teeth on the side, like the whole side of her face can open up like a separate mouth, and it looks like she's some kind of like genetic accident. When you get to the bottom of that same page, um, look what they've done to me. How did you get like this? I have to fight you. No, you don't. If they'll hurt me if I don't. And then the battle resumes. So this is
Yeah.
great. They really got me with that. You have a little bit of pathos mixed in there. You got super muscular pit fighter. There's a lot of blood and gore here. When Wonder Woman's ripping apart that monster, here you're seeing that the the cheetah arm is goring Wonder Woman. She's bleeding all over the place. So they're pulling out the stops with this. It's a splash panel after splash panel. There's a real rhythm to it. So this was a great book
Yeah, I
here.
knew this would be your cup of tea when it comes to action, Jake.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there was a Wonder Woman treatment that I saw by I think it's Jamie Hernandez that I showed you in
Wow.
an anthology I picked up. I picked up an
I think it was
anthology,
Gilbert.
and he made her. Was it Gilbert? Okay. Um, that had Wonder Woman as a super muscular character, and it was in their style, which is a little cartoony, kind of like Archie-ish version, but super muscular. And the Hernandez brothers have those characters. They have those. I don't want to say buxom. I want to say like strong. Really built, solid female characters, and they did a Wonder Woman 8 pager like that in the middle of this anthology comic that I got at Ollie's. About it was like all women all the time. So I wonder if some of these other artists are looking at that and saying, wow, there could be a more built Wonder Woman. We're not seeing that here. Her arms are kind of like cut up, but also kind of skinny. Although she is a little more like solid in her legs. So that's an interesting character design choice. But no shortage of action. I love this. That where she's fighting these monsters. The sound effects are kind of like superimposed in the background. It looks like this real action sequence where the ground is being kicked up. And then you have like all these kind of excitement lines. The colors really complement what's going on. So I'm really into this story. So this is all just a one
Yeah, it
shot,
was
right?
like, I don't know how many issues this was, but
It was
yeah, the
three.
whole thing is in this book. Um, and once again, this is
Right.
another great monster design. There have been some really generic monsters that they all look kind of the same in a lot of books lately. He does some really. I'm not saying they're totally original. You couldn't find something that looked a little bit like them, but his drawing of them is really strong, and they look really great.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
leaning into the
There's
whole
a there,
aliens. the H.R. Giger kind of, but even like, was that Starship Trooper?
That's what I would
That
compare it to.
right, like a star, yeah, like a more like a. But then they have the Velociraptor kind of thing. So I think he's definitely pulling down and then piping through all of this, stuff that's accessible to us, and then coming up with his own. But yeah, I think now, do we want to spoil too much? Because I think when I found out who the monsters were, it was a big shift for me. Uh, did that have the same result with you, Dan? And should we spoil
Yeah.
it?
Again, well, are we kind of spoiling it? Are
Hmm.
we worrying about?
People can bail
Yeah,
if they don't want to see the ending.
this would be the time to bail because, up to this
I
point,
don't.
if it,
It's not revealed yet, though, is it? It's still a little further
not
on.
yet. Yeah, not yet.
Okay. You don't have
Yeah,
to
because
bail
there's
yet,
some.
people.
Oh, is this thing?
You don't have to bail yet. Well, I mean the. Go ahead.
So Kurt, this
No,
comic's
two,
what,
well,
4 years
yeah, no,
old?
two. It's no, no, yeah, four, 2020. Yeah, yeah,
The
2 years
comic
old?
itself came out, yeah, probably
Yeah.
2019 or so, and then this hardback came out 2020, I think.
yeah. But this video is being sold to
Well,
old guys like us, not kids. So
Yeah.
I'm worried. I'm worried. Like, if at
Well,
this point we've gotten some oldies out there going, wow, that looks like a really interesting
well,
Wonder Woman.
yeah,
Going from there.
I already gave away one of the big things. If you want to stop now and just do a summary, because
I
like I said,
I agree.
I always jump back and forth between how much I'm going to give away in a video, and a lot of it is not thought out. I go into something planning not to look at so much, and then I end up looking because that's just the way I am. Um, so so if we want to stop here and just talk a little bit about.
Yes. I was going to say this, Dan. Why don't we go
yeah, I
Dan,
mean,
Jake, and me, and everybody just sort of do a closing remark about this. So go
Okay.
ahead, Dan.
Okay, so like
all
I said,
right.
I enjoyed this book a lot. There's the twist he's that Kurt is talking about could have been really overly sentimental or overly manipulative if done
Yeah,
poorly. I
yeah,
think it's done well in this book. I was okay with it. I've seen something similar in other titles, but this was done. This was done very well. Um, like I said, the only thing that bothered me about this is it would have been it. It would have felt more like the Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, team. This doesn't make them feel as cohesive because the way he draws them. Because even Batman, when he has another flashback that involves Batman and Superman, and
yeah,
both of them are not drawn with the gravitas that we think of for those characters because we've seen The Dark Knight and we've seen all
yeah,
these things that show them as grizzled veterans who have younger heroes. I mean, the fact is, Wonder Woman looks much younger than Batman and Superman, which is kind of weird. It kind of feels like it takes away a little bit from her, in my opinion, and it makes her redemption, her return to power, because you might not tell it from here, but she mentions it a couple times. She does not have all her power here. This
right,
as badass as she is, she's not the badass. And at first, I thought, well, in this universe or whatever they're saying, maybe she's not supposed to be so superpowered, but she was. She's lost it for some reason, which you find out later in the book. I think the return to power would have felt better if she had looked like an older, wiser kind of person who had been this battle scarred veteran who and this her relationship with Batman and Superman had felt bigger, and I think that kind of lessened it for me. But that's really the only major thing, and even that didn't stop me from enjoying it. And I really recommend this. I know you can't all get it for $5, but maybe it seemed like they must have printed a lot of them, you know. So happy hunting on that one. Over to you, Jake.
Johnston. And I would check out anything that he's doing if it's like this. Wonder Woman is just kind of like the vehicle that he's using to get all of his action and stuff um, in there. But it's a great retelling. I think that's what you do now. Every time you pick up a book, it's like, okay, what's the story going to be? This is not necessarily going to tie into what happened 20, 30 years ago. Um, and so, you have to accept that. But, is it a good story? Does it take some of the elements and, does it rehash them in an interesting way? And this does. The other thing is when it comes to, the Frank Miller treatment of Batman and Superman, I think Frank Miller had in his mind, and that was very, very new and different. Nobody had done that before. Imagining them in the future and they're not doing so good, and neither is the world, and everything is really dark and grim. Maybe Kurt knows, but was that before or after Sin City, or was that concurrent with Sin City? I think Sin City was after all that, right?
Yeah, way
The
after
dark,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, like
So
10
yeah, so
years.
he had it in his mind. Yeah, he started to get in his mind because in Sin City, the protagonist is this old grizzled guy that gets shot up and beat up at every turn, right? And so he was really taking a lot of abuse out on his characters, and it was great. People love it, and it really makes you feel strongly, and it brought you into the story, and it looks like they're doing that here a little bit. So, I think we're in kind of like the post Dark Knight era where, this is now a template for, others to go off into the past, go off into the future. This is kind of like a future that also looks like the past. I mean, whatever. You're bringing in a lot of different influences all at once, and you have a great result. I mean, this is a good comic. I see that when it ends, it's just the end of chapter one, at least on the PDF that you gave me. So I'm into it, and I'm very much looking forward to some more of this.
Yeah, I have to say, when Dan, you sent this suggestion to me, I was a bit shocked because your channel primarily deals with, as well as Jake and I's channel, the obscure, the independent, the alternative, the black and white, and everything. But when I did find something online that showed, as a matter of fact, I can show you the page. Yeah, it was this page. I saw this spread, and when I saw this character in a pit fight scenario and it's apocalyptic, I was completely like, hey, I want to give this a try. So I found it on Amazon for $20, and because I'm a Prime member, I paid no shipping and handling. And I'm good with it. And of course, it was one of these dinged up on the corners, and I'm once again very good with it as well. I also want to say, having been doing for 2 years now the podcast with Jake, and then seeing other people's podcasts and what they're talking about, and of course, the majority of who I watch is either my age or maybe 10 years younger. The cartoons kayfabe being sort of at the top of that, but there's about a dozen other channels I rely on to kind of get information. And part of that information has, for the last couple of years, been, um, you know, they took my Wonder Woman and they messed her up, and why are they doing this and why are they doing that? I just have to say, and I really do hope I get the chance to sit down with Daniel Warren Johnson and just talk about um, this Wonder Woman Dead Earth book with him. And I have literally probably a dozen more questions that I don't think any of us could really answer right now, because I do feel like he was given a task at a period in time that you had to be very delicate and make choices in a wise way, or they'd crucify you on Twitter or Instagram or something like that. Um, and the delivery mechanism of the whole thing, I'm just very much in awe of. And it's given me a sense of rejuvenation towards these characters. I love those first 50 or 100 issues of dominatrix polyamorous Wonder Woman character, right out of the gate. But Jake and I have been talking about on the podcast, our Turbo Pit Writer podcast, about all these characters coming into public domain. And as certain things get freed to us, what will happen? I made a statement, and I'm going to make it again. And I've been kind of poking around. I have way too much on my plates as is, so I couldn't really do anything. But when the original Batman comes into public domain and you're allowed to use within those parameters, I'm going to do my own little Batman thing. because going back to what Jake was just saying, Batman Dark Knight and Sin City they are love letters from Frank Miller back to the hard-boiled crime novelists. He's stated it over and over again. He just so happened to be using comic books because the movie industry wasn't letting him come and play to make those things happen. But I don't know about you guys, but I had a fantastic time having this roundtable discussion and getting just as far as we have with this. But I hope we can do this again. I hope Dan had a good time and we were good hosts, because I think more and more of this discussion has to be had. And it's hard to put even $20 down and take a chance. But this was a good $20 investment on it, and I'm looking forward to other things. So once again, I just want to say thank you, Dan, for making the suggestion and coming on, and I hope we can do this again.
I certainly concur. I had a great time. I love listening to you and Jake talk comics. I'm trying not to spoil everything about your comic, but I can't help looking in on it a little time. You're taking so long to do this. You're keeping me on what they call tender hooks, I believe. And but I'm really looking forward to it. And because, every once in a while I'll drop in and I'll hear about the family that's running the world and this and that and the other thing. I'm going like, oh, come on. And I'm wishing you good luck on your Crom revision time. And I'm going to probably try and go back and do links on some of my older videos. I didn't do a very good job when I was first putting them out because of the equipment I was using. I think more people need to, hopefully if enough people find out about some of these things, more things like that will be created. That's always part of my hope when I'm crowdfunding stuff and seeing these artists who are taking a chance and doing something weird and out of the ordinary.
So on the way out, Dan, go ahead and give us a shout out about Rave Sensation and who you are and what you're all about.
So my YouTube channel is Rave Sensation. It's basically, I own a lot of stuff and I have most of it in a storage locker where it doesn't do me much good, but hopefully in the next couple of years, I'll be moving to a place that's big enough that I can have access to it all. And the original channel was all about digging through it and finding stuff to show off, brag about what I've collected over the years. But I've also started now, buying stuff that other people have recommended to me because of my channel. Right. So I'm just adding to the horde as it is. But I'm having a lot of fun. I didn't know all these channels out there for comics existed on YouTube, I really didn't ever go on YouTube really, and then through one thing and another, I found this, and the people I get to talk to on a regular basis about comics are maybe not as interested in the obscure stuff that I am, and so it's nice that there's this that the few hundred or few thousands of people who are interested in some of these really obscure comics can find each other. And that's basically what my channel's about. And I thank you both for doing such a great channel. And I'm really, really looking forward to more Turbo Pit Fighter.
Thank you. Yes, we'll have links down in the description. The top one is going to be directly to Rave Sensation. Well, thank you very much. And we look forward to the next one. And that's all I got. We'll let these people get back to reading comics, making them if they do. Jake, anything on the way out?
Nope. Check out our other channels. We got Comics and Influence and Creator Exchange. Kurt, I hope this is going to be cross-referenced with our Indie Creator Exchange, right?
Of course it is.
Or maybe this. No, this should be cross-referenced with Comics and Influence, right?
I don't know. We'll discuss it. It might become its own thing. That's what I'm hoping.